Hi, I'm Josh from Crunch Media, and welcome to episode 2 of Talent Talks, the podcast where we hero professionals within the talent attraction and recruitment marketing space. And a big welcome to Michelle, Head of Talent Acquisition and Workforce Planning over at Wiltshire Police. Michelle, welcome to episode 2. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Josh. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So, bit of context, if anyone noticed slight bags under my eyes, I know these are always filmed or recorded well in advance of life. I've just had a baby, so if at any point I go slightly dopey, it's because we had babygeddon last night and the child would not sleep. But that's what you get from the 2-week-old and returning to work and recording a podcast the next day. So, apologies in advance, but I'm sure it'll go very, very smoothly. Michelle, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. It's really nice to be here, to have you here. It's nice for me to be here as well. There you go. Point in case. So, first of all, tell us about yourself. Kind of, who are you? Who do you work for? What do you solve on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, and thank you, Josh, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm Michelle Dring. As you mentioned there, I head up talent acquisition and workforce planning here at Wiltshire Police. In terms of just a bit about me, my background, I've been in talent acquisition for my whole career. Yes, that's true. With a mixture of, agency, start off in high street agency, then moving through to some in-house roles and also RPO, more global type roles, and then back into in-house. So I've done a bit of a blended mix across the piece. But currently with Wiltshire Police, leading my team to deliver all hires, so fixed term contract, permanent. We don't deal with the temporary side of things, but that's for our frontline critical roles as well as our corporate services roles.
So how many hires are you typically dealing with Wiltshire Police on a kind of monthly, yearly basis?
Yeah, so if I look on a yearly basis, obviously we have fluctuations. We tend to put in our for volume intakes, we would look at a year in advance, so we work by financial year, but then we have quarterly reviews because things change, right? We need to make sure we're running in line with attrition and we're running in line with operational demand. But typically I would say it's around 350, 400 or so, but it fluctuates, and that's a mix of our frontline volume intakes and our corporate services staff.
And it must be quite a challenging role in kind of the space that you're in, the sector that you're in as well. There's obviously a lot of challenges within, I guess, kind of the political climate at the moment for what you probably have to try and overcome in that space too. So do you find that affects you, kind of especially trying to hire those frontline roles versus kind of the more skill-based roles that you have in-house?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think policing, what you often see in the big media wanting to run stories is big splashes around potentially the negative stuff. What's not called out is the day in, day out heroics that happen all the time with our officers and frontline colleagues who are doing amazing work. So it's about, for me, with our candidates and that candidate attraction side, how can we showcase that to say, this is an awesome place to work, and day in, day out, you make a difference to people's lives in terms of keeping Wiltshire safe and putting victim safety first. So I think it is tricky, because I think that initial view might be policing's maybe had a tricky run of it, but I think at its core, policing is an amazing service to be part of. I love working for Wiltshire Police and for the police in general, and it's going back to that core of what is it that we do in terms of serving our public and giving back. So I think it's flipping that and really playing to that amazingness of working for police. That's the trick, really.
And it must be quite a crowded space to try and get that message out. So what do you find? What do you find the best methods to do that, to try and communicate that? Because, like you said, there's so much noise out there. There's so much, you're hearing so much in the news, in the media. How do you cut through in that space?
Yeah, it's a good question again. So I think it's about getting our smart attraction channels and being agile with those. So the programmatic side and the display advertising, the retargeting, which works really well. It's that passive and active audience. Plus, once we've got applicants coming through, it's about giving them a great experience, right? So it's that what I've done with my team here. I've been here since December. It's really that a candidate-centric approach, I would call it, Josh. It's I say candidate, it's actually stakeholder-centric. Stakeholder-centric in terms of candidate, but also in terms of our business leads, right? Informing them, because the hiring experience, it doesn't just sit with TA, it sits with our business leads as well. They play a critical role in this, and I want to get them involved to say, give your candidate a call during onboarding, that type of thing. But it's about where we've got that interest, and we do get that, how can we, so people starting to submit applications, what can we do to stay really close to those candidates, give that reassurance, give that contact to get them to convert, and then continue to do that at every stage of the process. Because we when I look at start to submit rates, we before we started this optimization work, which we've now done, and I say we've done, we'll continue to do it, right? Optimization, I don't think it's not, is it? It's never finished. You've got to continually look at it. Is it working? What can we do differently, etc. But before we started it, start to submit ratio or percentage was about 45% for volume intakes. We're now up at 65%. There's still a lot of work to do, but that's a big improvement, right? So we've just got to keep going to convert those people.
That's you. And what have you done to change that? Obviously, process optimization is a kind of a critical factor for you and your role, and for how you're driving talent attraction forwards and the recruitment side forwards. What have you done to kind of change those rates? What are the kind of the three key things that you could say, this is something that I kind of staple my name to, and we've kind of championed within the business?
Yeah, it's I would term it as it's laying those foundations, Josh. It's our ways of working. So one is smarter attraction channels, right? Let's get out there, passive and active, right? Let's go across both, because actually a lot of people are passive that we want to speak to and we want to connect with. So it's across those smarter attraction channels. Then it's around candidate contact. So a KPI I have in place for my team across the volume side of the house is a time through stages of 7 network days. So no candidate stays in one particular step for over 7 network days. So we've got to be calling them. In fact, it goes 7 network days is kind of the ding, ding, ding red flag area. We pull daily reports to look at new applicants and started applicants, and we're on them every day to give them a call. What are your concerns? Or if they have concerns, but to give them that guidance around, right, this is that part, you need to do this part, and to give them that reassurance. So it's that increased candidate contact. The next bit, I think that the third piece, you asked for 3, is automating the process as much as possible for candidates. So I'll give you a real specific example, and this is using the ATS, the applicant tracking system. When a candidate gets to verbal offer accepted, again, this is for our officer intakes, there are a number that they then go through police vetting, and there are a number of checks they have to go through. So job-related fitness tests, they have to have medical checks, they have to have uniform fittings, biometrics, all this type of stuff. That is quite clunky, and phoning candidates to get them to book in, back and forth, all that type of stuff. We've automated it through the ATS, so candidates self-book. We give them the slots and they self-book. It's quicker, it's easier, and off they go. So I think it's making it, we've got to have that human contact, but we've also got to make it easy in terms of that automation and using smart attraction to make sure we're reaching the audience that we want to.
It's really interesting, because I think that's it's a big talking point at the moment, especially within the industry, of creating a better candidate experience. It feels like the market has been very business-led for a while, and what candidates are crying out for is that better experience, more touch points, whether that's more human touch points, when they, like you're saying, that ringing people up, making sure they're engaged, keeping them on that process. Because I imagine the recruitment process is pretty long within the police, right?
It is.
That can go on for a serious amount of time. So keeping someone in that process is probably critical to actually making sure they do go through to application. Agreed. So when I look at the time through stages for the latest officer campaign we ran, it was 28 weeks from application submitted through to day 1 start. That's long. That's a long process. Now,
everything that happens around all of those checks, they've got to happen, right? We are absolutely dedicated to that. We want to make sure we are bringing the right people in. So those are fundamentally important. But yes, it's a long time for someone to be in the process. And making it feel good makes a difference, doesn't it? And I think that human contact combined with making it easy with the tech to book in, I think it gives that, we're trying to hit that sweet spot, really.
How do you get managers to buy into that? 'Cause that's probably a slightly different way of working as well that you're trying to put into place. Managers won't always be wanting to call candidates up, or maybe that's something slightly different that's being asked of them. Have the managers bought into it in that space? Has it been an education process within the business?
So that I would say is more on the non-volume side. On volume, we're not there yet because they come in via cohorts. On the non-volume side, managers are actually pretty happy to do it. I think, but again, given our ways of working on non-volume, because they're different, volume and non-volume are such different beasts, aren't they? They have very different methodologies, both critical, but they have different methodologies. On the non-volume side, that is very much again, it's stakeholder centric, but it's keeping that contact with your hiring managers to say, this is a two-way street, right? This is what I'm going to do for you. Here are all my deliverables, but this is what I need from you. So if this is going to work, it's a partnership agreement on the non-volume side. But that comes from setting expectations right at the beginning, I think, Josh. That comes with having a detailed briefing at the beginning of every requisition. So requisition comes through. We are not making that live until we've had a detailed briefing to understand, I see your role profile, but actually what do you want? What do you want? What's in the role? How can I market this? Because I know the talent and the labour market and the talent that's available out there to us. I can also tell you, if you're just looking in Devizes or Chippenham, you're really going to narrow your talent pool. So we can do that, but just be very aware of it. But also saying, at this stage, I'm going to need X and Y from you. You've got to play your role here. So it's that buy-in right at the beginning. My team do that when they're managing requisitions in non-volume. For me, it's about cascading that at a senior level to say this is what this needs to look like for these reasons, and getting that buy-in at every level.
And the one thing that seems to underpin this all is a data-led approach. You talk about driving to creating these reports on a daily basis. Can you talk us through that? What does a data-led approach mean for you kind of on a day-to-day basis to help you do your job?
Totally. So I think it's as simple, Josh, as am I from the ATS? It's am I from the ATS? I want to look at new applicants every day in the non-vol space and volume space, sorry, and moving those candidates along. Then having those data stamps for the time through stages to say, why is that person sat on shortlisting for 2 weeks? What are we doing there? If you've got a delay there with the hiring manager, you need to do something about it. So it's having informed conversations. Again, it's that flip. It's ensuring our line managers, our operational colleagues who do a fantastic job and are amazing, but they understand it's a two-way process. You can't give me an intake of 20 and my team will run with that and then not give us anyone to interview. Let's set that out right from the beginning, right? Because if we don't, I can show you this is the dropout rate that we'll get, and I can use my MI to show that. So we have in the ATS, I ensure it's a 95% data integrity and accuracy KPI that my team have got. But if someone withdraws, I make sure that data is completely correct, so I can give that to the business to say, well, actually, we would have fulfilled that intake at 20 out of 20, but actually we only fulfilled 14 because we missed, 20 interview slots or whatever that meant, because we had this increase in withdrawal rates. So it's having evidence-based decisions which hiring managers can really see and understand to go, okay, I get it, as opposed to, I think typically what you see in a transformation program and what I've seen, typically TA is seen as Admin's great, right? I love admin, but it's a centre of expertise. We're not just admin, and we are doing a value add job and really trying to give you the best talent, but you've got to come to the party as well. And if a rec doesn't land and an intake doesn't land, we need to be really objective to understand what actually happened here and use the data to inform those decisions. Because if it's we didn't get enough applicants up front, totally we need to work on that, right? But actually, if it's because we didn't have enough interviewers, that's a different challenge that we need to resolve, and we'll resolve it together with the business. This isn't an us and them. I work very closely with the business, say they're fantastic stakeholders, but we've got to work together to really look at how can we do this better. Let's be led by what the data is showing us.
And it maybe going back some right to the beginning, you talked about kind of you started off in High Street. You went off into that RPO piece. Is that where a lot of this learnings come from? Where a lot of these processes come from? Is that efficiency model that you learn in the RPO space?
Totally it is. It's around how are we effective, how are we getting best return on investment. So because talent acquisition typically is a fairly expensive function because we need attraction, we need all those bits and pieces. But actually, how are we really utilising that to maximise it? So definitely, RPO is where I learnt that process optimization and what good looks like, and to use data to make sure we're making good decisions so we can take those learnings. But again, that your data's only ever as good as where you've put it, right? So the ATS compliance is critical, which is where in any transformation, and I've done it here, it's stripping it right back to do that re-education and relearning with the team to say, this is how we use the ATS, this is what this means. Working with the ATS as well to say, what can we do better, right? What's available to us that we're not using? So there's something actually that additional modules in our ATS, which I'm just unpicking now with my recruitment marketing manager, which will serve up content to candidates at the relevant point of their journey. It's wonderful. Help us, ATS, to build that out, which they're doing. Their customer success manager is fabulous. So we're just building those bits out. But it's about bringing the team with me to say, this is what we need to do. Let's go with this approach and see what the results are. So when I look at the difference that we've made so far on volume hiring with the changes and the new ways of working and the evidence-based decisions, last financial year, our fulfillment against volume intakes was 67%. This year, we're at just under 90%. So a huge difference. And that is just those changes in terms of ways of working and looking at the data, not letting candidates sit there, doing something with them, but also, I guess, the compliance piece, because if you don't disposition candidates, there's the whole GDPR scariness, Josh. Maybe we won't go down that road today because it gets a bit scary over there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's fascinating, and especially when you talk about what you're describing, what you're doing within the ATS, it sounds actually like a very B2C-led approach where you're delivering content at the right time at different stages that often you'd see kind of through large retailers, large online retailers are often delivering, I know I've done it in the past, delivering dynamic content depending on what that person is doing within that journey. Is that what you're trying to achieve there?
Yeah. That's exactly it. And we're going to build the content and shape it depending on the type of role they've applied for as well. So not just depending on what stage they're at in the process, but also the type of role they've applied for. So I'll give you an example. With officers, that 28-week time to hire, they will want to hear from the deputy chief constable or the assistant, or the chief constable, right, to keep them engaged and to keep them feeling great about it. Whereas maybe in corporate services, they'll want to hear from the chief of corporate services, etc. So it's about tailoring that content, but also, what is it candidates want to hear at each stage, exactly as you've just said, and how do they want to hear it? So the module that we've got, the Engage module, video content, yes please, right? We can absolutely do that to get that out, because people consume things in different ways, don't they? And video tends to work pretty well. So yeah, it's I think it's smart. I think sometimes it's often the little things that just keep people hooked in and engaged, isn't it? So, a video, a 30-second video can be all it takes when someone's thinking, "Oh God, I've got to complete this, job-related fitness test." If they're served up a video saying, "Actually, don't be scared. It looks like this, and I got through it," you might think, "Oh, actually, yeah, I'll go do it." Do you know what I mean? It's those small things that can make a difference.
No, it's fascinating because I think especially when you look at the TA industry as a whole and recruitment industry as a whole, sometimes it can be very much stuck in the drudgery and stuck in very kind of, I guess, kind of outdated principles and ways of working. But what you're doing over there is something very, very new. You don't tend to talk to a lot of people that are adopting, like I said, kind of effectively B2C principles, right? Kind of consumer-led principles where you're talking to people at those different stages of the journey with interesting content, varying content, dynamic content that will focus on them and kind of engage them through it. You see it through, you'll often see it with online retailers with kind of shopping experiences, won't you? And they'll be serving up dynamic content, kind of pre-purchase, post-purchase, to taking them through all the way through to that point of return and hopefully then trying to get them to buy again. Whereas what you're doing is creating that funnel cycle approach where you're keeping them engaged within that application process longer, especially playing to the length of time it takes for someone to get through.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think building on that, there's also something that you touched on there. Again, coming into that, just delivering the basic stuff really well. There's things as well, Josh, such as the quality of feedback we're giving to candidates who are unsuccessful after interview. Someone who doesn't quite fit the bill, but they've done really well, but someone else scored higher, we need to ensure we give them really quality feedback because potentially we'll want them as a repeat applicant, won't we? So that's a skill again that I'm going to work through with my team to say, are we ensuring we're getting that quality feedback, and how are we ensuring whether a candidate's successful or not, they have a great experience, they want to apply to Wiltshire Police again, and they're an advocate of us as an organisation.
Are you able to balance that well between kind of volume versus kind of hard to fill roles? Is there, because I know a lot of people might say, look, giving feedback across the volume piece is just too difficult. There's too many candidates there. Have you found that sweet spot? Are you able to do it for
Yeah,
both?
we are able to do it for both. I think I'm fortunate. I've worked in environments where volume is a lot more than where we are here. So whilst it's volume, it's not real extreme volume. But also we give feedback after interview, so after face-to-face interview, so not at the other stages. I think it's about tailoring it, because if you're trying to give verbal feedback at every stage, I think that would be a challenging on resource. So I think it's making sure you give that quality feedback at the relevant time, and after interview is definitely the one to go for. And we have hit that sweet spot. I'm not saying my team aren't busy. They're very, very busy, but they're doing an ace job, right? And I
Yeah.
know I regularly ask them for feedback, to say, look, how's it going? How's it feeling? Because I know we're across so much. They're certainly enjoying engaging with the candidates so much more. The candidates, they tell me, are appreciating that approach too. So I think it is that sweet spot of finding when is it going to land the best? Is it going to be best received? But also with feedback, and I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole here, but again, with my team, I say, look, we should always be offering feedback after interview, but don't force it. If people don't want to hear their feedback, that's okay too, right? But we should be able to offer them some constructive feedback. So if they want to be a repeat applicant, we've given that to them, and they can always come back in once they've worked on whatever evidence was missing.
It's nice. It's a very humanised approach. I think that's what I'm hearing. It's a very, you hear all the time, but recruitment is a people-based industry, and to have that human-based approach is so important, especially in the sector that you're in as well. You want to create that. You want to create that brand reputation, don't you? You don't want it to be kind of perceived in certain mannerisms. So being able to communicate them in certain ways, being able to engage them through that funnel, not only keeps people connected, but also leaves that long-standing kind of positive taste in mouth, which you might not be getting somewhere else.
This is it exactly, and you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. It's that fine line between data. We've got to be data led, but people focused or people centric, right? So it's that mix of the two, to make sure that we get that sweet spot, as you say. But yeah, ultimately it's about people.
And kind of if you look forward to so what's coming down the road in the recruitment industry, what do you see are the challenges? You've obviously kind of unpicked so much there just in your current role, but what do you see as kind of coming down the road as what we might have to overcome next, or what you've kind of maybe had gotten kind of in the down the back of the sofa thinking about?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about employer branding. I'm thinking about for us in Wiltshire Police, but more broadly than that, in the TA space, I would suggest it's AI, and it's the use of AI through selection processes. So as we know, over 80% of Gen Zers don't think using AI is cheating as part of their selection process, which is interesting, right? Really interesting the way that's going. But what can we do to there's two schools of thought. One school of thought says almost harnessing AI and using it to your advantage. The other says look at your selection tools and make them AI proof. So we're not candidates can't, I guess, out cheat the system, if that makes
Game the
sense, but they
system,
can't
yeah.
use it. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So I think that, and I think it's really tricky because I'm continually challenged, and I get it, with the question of if someone takes an online assessment, how do you know it's them that's taken it? And it hasn't been someone else that's taken it. But again, I think that's down to the form of selection methodology you use. So let me be really specific here. If that's an SJT, situational judgment test, yeah, you could get someone else in who is, has X, Y, and Z better than you or whatever, get them to come and take the situational judgment test. If it's a behavioural based test that is assessing potential and behaviours, typically in the methods that I've seen, you don't know what they're assessing. So how do you know what you're being scored against when you're taking that test versus how your Uncle Bob would be scored against it? So that takes away that fear element, I think, and reassures the hiring community to say, well, yeah, they could have got someone else to take it, but they don't know what they're being assessed against.
And do you find that if you're putting that into place, you need to balance that against skilled roles as well? How do you find that? Because if you're just going down the behavioural assessment route for the skilled roles, that could lead you down to a path, or if you don't kind of deliver it effectively, roll it out effectively, that could lead you down a path where you're not getting the right people in because it's just based
The
on
right
behavioural
technical
assessment rather than
skills.
just, rather than having the
Yeah.
skills base in place. So
Yeah,
how do you overcome
I get
that?
it. Yeah, so and I haven't used behavioural based assessment for not, I would call that non-volume, so there's technical skills yet, but the way that I would see that and the way that I'll pitch it is that you have your paper sift up front, right? So that's where we check if it's a developer, if they've got Python, SQL, or whatever that looks like, and you use your behavioural based assessment up front as your sifting tool in essence, and if they pass that, they've ticked the boxes on the paper sift, they've got the right behaviours, then we invite them to interview, and that's where you can drill into the technical skills, whether that's via a task, so you could get them to do some programming or whatever that looks like, or whether that's a combination of a task and maybe a few technical questions. But that's how I'd see, and that's almost the ideal, isn't it? Because you've got the behavioural fit and you've got the technical skills.
And I think that it's really interesting. I think it's a fantastic approach, and you've very much wrapped it under when we spoke before this, is this be better, push for better. So you're putting everything into place, and then you're pushing for that continuous improvement. You're continually driving it forwards, and not just picking up kind of the improvements within the business, but potentials down the line. Those challenges that you see down the line, such as AI, for instance. And how are you rolling that out with the team? How does the team stay on that journey with you? Because it sounds like you've kind of almost picked everything apart and then had to sew it back together again. So what does that mean for the team coming on that journey in that space?
Yeah, good question. So I have regular touch points with my team, so weekly team meetings, but where I try to keep them up to speed with everything that's happening. But also I giving them tools so they can see and they can learn. I think that CPD part, there's so much in the talent acquisition space, Josh, which I think potentially outsiders wouldn't realise just how much there is, and it's such an area of expertise. So I've got membership to the talent labs for my team, where they can go on copywriting webinars or workshops or whatever that looks like, giving them access to different insight reports that I get and dissecting them with the team to say, right, let's look at this. What's that telling us? What can we learn from it? Having copywriting sessions with the team again. So looking at, this is our advert at the moment. Is that working? What's the application numbers we're getting? So it's really just trying to bring them in to that. I think part of the trick, which I attempt to do, though I can always be better, and I'm sure I need to improve on it, is making myself available for the team, but also using my senior team to cascade it down through the team so everyone is aware, everyone knows, having simple things like group teams, chats, channels, so we can ask questions and post things in there to keep each other up to date. But I think that's something that has to continually be worked on to ensure that information is shared, everyone knows, everyone feels empowered, but also feels that they've got that knowledge to make those decisions and they know what's happening.
No, I think it's great. I think it's a word that's come up in conversation over the last half hour again and again. It's continuous improvement. It's Kaizen.
Yeah.
It's and I think that's something that all of us can learn from. Is kind of, what's happened? What can we do better? What went wrong, what can we do better, and using it as a learning point and using it as that tool, especially in a digital age where you are able to tweak things and you are able to manage things, and it's not a one and done approach. Where especially when you're working with digital tools, there's so many ways that you can modify it. Like you said, the copywriting sessions, the creative sessions, you can tweak things and you can change things, and that's not just a digital approach, but also like a personal approach.
Totally, and you're absolutely right. You're spot on, and things like looking again. We talked about the funnel. That funnel, looking at drop-off points and conversion rates, and using that to look at the next campaign to say to do a comparison. So I'll give you a really good example. For one of our volume intakes, I saw that our knockout rate at eligibility checks or the knockout questions was over 50%. You think that just isn't right, guys? Look, we need to look at it like this, because that doesn't feel right. What's happening? We need to drill into that. So next time we know if it's up there again, we need to investigate it. So that's again using that funnel to say, is a 75% pass rate, is that right? I'm not sure that's right. What can we do differently? What's happening there? Are we letting the right people through? Do you know what I mean? To then make those informed decisions.
I'm with you. No, it's fascinating. Look, I don't want to take too much more of your time, and thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me. I think it's a fascinating conversation, especially in a sector that could potentially be challenged by perceptions, how you're overcoming it, what you're doing to improve that within the business as well. And I think some of the B2C principles, the consumer principles that often we don't, I think we're starting to see more of. I think the more people I talk to, there is slowly this move forwards. Is there's a move towards performance media, there's a move towards employer brand and what that means, the give and the get, and then the internal process that are then adapting for that. There is a bit of movement, there is a bit of a change happening within the industry, and it's really interesting to hear about how you're adapting that and how you're managing that within the business that you're in.
Yeah, no, it's been great, Josh. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, so thank you.
Fantastic. Well, for anyone who's listening, thank you so much for listening to episode 2 featuring Michelle from Wiltshire Police. We will be back soon with another episode. Bear with, and thank you once again. Michelle, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.